Anarchy. This game review is going to be a little strange, no on-screen pun intended, being that I don't really like fighting games, since I have the fighting game skill of basic button combinations and pressing buttons like a spastic monkey. I also like Marvel properties, but I tend not to really like most of Capcom's. So take this review with mountainous grains of salt. Now, this review will mostly only cover the single player, being that I had a hard enough time with the AIs and didn't want to get my ass completely kicked on an online server by a bunch of spastic, twitchy 11-year-old. Now, I had this game for a week, which was mostly due to procrastination, being that once I actually finally did sit up and start playing it, it only took me about 3 hours to beat the entire story mode. Now, most fighting games aren't exactly known for having a good or strong story mode, or at least ones that don't have to be completely fleshed out by a comic book attachment series. But for what it's worth, the story is that Ultron from the Marvel Universe combines himself with some character I think from the Mega Man series of the Capcom universe and begins to totally wreck the entire world up. No shock there. And the heroes of the combined world having to team up to take down Ultron and save their combined world. This is mostly conveyed through a series of almost entirely cutscenes. Of the 3 hours I played, I would almost safely bet that an hour or more of it was spent cutscening it up instead of actually playing the game. But enough going on about the bland story. Probably the first thing I really noticed upon booting this game up, aside from the fact that it looks fairly good, is during an overlong intro cinematic where they introduce multiple characters from both universes who all, for whatever reason, have to state each other's names when speaking to them, as though we don't know who these characters are, is that the voice acting, while being probably just about middling, the writing has to be some of the worst things I've ever heard. I wasn't expecting Pride and Prejudice levels of writing, but this gets particularly obnoxious being that most of the characters either speak in exposition, angst, or quipping. The quipping being especially cringeworthy in any chapter where they have comedy characters and straight characters occupying the same scene. There's a particular part in the second chapter that is both Spider-Man and Frank West from the Dead Rising series, both whom are, quote, the funny men of their mediums, who are sharing screen time with Chris Redfield from the Resident Evil series, who is about as funny as a dead squirrel in an exhaust pipe. This brings me around to another odd set of complaints. This game actually has less characters than the other Marvel vs. Capcom games. I largely suspect this is due to the fact that they tried to put every single one of the characters they put into this game into the story mode somewhere, and it all feels a little shoehorned in at some points. I'm shuddering just thinking about them trying to put the entire cast of Marvel vs. Capcom 2 in a story mode, which is probably largely why these games haven't had new stories until now. And whoever had the thankless task of having to put all of these characters into the same scenes must have gotten a little narky at some point, because in a lot of the scenes with all the characters in them at once, the characters simply hold their fighting poses from in the actual battles. And when they're not doing that, they're overacting or posing. And this is more of a whining nitpick than anything, but I've gotten kind of used to hearing Bradley Cooper as Rocket Raccoon. And since Rocket features rather heavily in this game, it's a little jarring to hear all that trademark witticism and attitude coming from a voice that really is akin to putting a pine cone down your ear. Another small gripe I have is the entire game they build up the character Thanos as the one you basically need to save and release in order to have him crush Ultron as your only other resort. And once in a while in-game they let you play as Thanos. But this tends to work out very poorly, being that the game does not make you feel very powerful at all when they're building up the entire game that Thanos is probably one of the only people capable of beating Ultron at this point, being that Ultron has gotten a hold of 2 of the Infinity Stones, and Thanos is the only one who knows where the other 4 are. But every time I played as Thanos, he's slow, sluggishly slow, and I never felt like a real threat to anything. Another complaint I've had, and I'm sure a lot of purists will have, is that they took the game down from being able to take 3 characters into a given level down to 2, which was one of the game's unique selling points and I think does it no favors. Especially being that fighting games have been coming out a lot in the last few years, and it seems like Marvel vs. Capcom has been giving up the only things that have been making it unique. The colorful visuals seem to have been toned down a little, and the light-hearted attitude that most of the games have taken towards the whole genre especially seems to have come down to being a hair more gritty than normal. One thing this game did manage to keep from all of its predecessors is a very tight set of controls that are very easy to pick up but very hard to master. So despite the fact that I'm not really a fighting game person, I was able to pick this game up with relative ease and play like I actually knew what I was doing. However, there's a really nasty difficulty spike right near the beginning of the game during a battle between Ryu and the Hulk, which I ended up having to turn the difficulty down after getting smashed in the face by the Hulk repeatedly until I had had just about enough and almost turned the game off entirely. Though, as I said before, I'm not really a fighting game person, the fact that this game's controls were easy enough to pick up that I was able to stick with the game the entire time. As where I play most fighting games for around 30 minutes and just feel that I'm good with what I got. All this being said, I really feel the point of this whole thing is that this game is a lot of style over substance. I definitely wouldn't have paid the $60 price tag for this game, and though I did enjoy it, I wouldn't recommend this for most people. And unless you're a huge Marvel fan, or have a big heart-on for Capcom, or have the twitchy kind of finger reflexes of a spaz, most of you aren't really going to get much out of this game, and I have to say, if I hadn't been writing down the particular points to write this review, I wouldn't have been able to remember anything about this game after having finished it, and indeed have forgotten most of it already. Thank you for watching our video. Please subscribe to Anarchy Entertainment for more videos, and we will see you next time.